I guess today we're going to do our top 5 bosses for Hollow Knight. Should be fun. I don't know. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start with my number 5?
I would like you to start because I'm excited to hear
Okay,
what
cool.
your number 5 boss is.
Very cool. So I'll start with my number 5. Then we'll talk about it. Then you do your number 5. We'll talk about it. Then I do my number 4, and so on until we reach our number 1
Great.
picks. So okay, so I'm gonna start with mine. Before I actually start, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that I look for in a boss.
Nice.
I really like your video on the sins of boss fights, and I actually brought the 4 sins into my notes before we started this, because I really like your way of looking at it. So this was one way that I tend to look at bosses. Even before you made this video and I watched it, I tend to look at bosses this way, except I just never had, terminology for it.
Oh, cool.
And I really like the way you did it. But there are a couple other things that I look for in bosses that I also want to bring up. And that's I'm actually going to link you the video that I watched years ago. So this is not your video. This is another video.
Okay.
That I also take inspiration from when I think of what I like in a boss. And there are two sort of 3 big points in this video that I particularly care about. He has 5 things in total.
Mm-hmm.
But there are 2 things, and then a third that I kind of derived from the 2 that I really like to look for. The 2 things that they talk about in the video is a trigger. Number 2, a trigger to start the boss fight. So something that the player does that starts the boss fight. I think when the player is in control of when the boss starts, it gives this sort of more profound feeling of anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that in a boss. So anytime a boss kind of employs this, I think it's like it tends to feel like a really good boss. And then the second thing is like an intro animation. So some sort of animation that kind of introduces the boss and makes it, feel boss-like, if you will. Now that second thing made me sort of derive a third thing, which is kind of well, not even just. I would actually even say the both of those things derived a third point that I really care about when I kind of look for a boss, and that's basically boss anticipation and setup.
Okay.
That last one kind of is sort of a culmination of the first 2, and just in general, I look for this. Like, if a boss has this sort of anticipation and setup that makes you, whether it makes you feel fear for the boss or excitement or whatever it is, anytime that a developer designs a boss in this way, right, I think that makes the boss so much more memorable. So that's just kind of my thing that I wanted to bring up before bringing up my number 5, because most of the bosses follow this trend that are in my lineup. If not all of them. I'm looking at them now. I would say maybe there might be one that doesn't quite follow this as well as the other 4. But my number 5 is Nightmare King Grim.
Mm-hmm.
Great boss. I really love the anticipation for him. You go into, so you obviously you see him sleeping, Grim, and you dream nail him, and he takes you into his dream, and the whole scene is kind of scary. It's very atmospheric, very theatrical. And then, you know, when you actually get there, you know, you hear a heart beating, and it starts to kind of break and and finally explode, and Nightmare King Grim comes up. It's just so, the whole thing is just very cinematic, and I really really love that about Nightmare King Grim. And then of course there's the actual fight that is, I think it does very very well in your list of sins here. I don't think it is probably one of the closest bosses to perfection if we are solely looking at your sort of your criteria for the 4 deadly sins of bosses. Yeah, because I can't think of anything. Everything, it's like there are no erratic outcomes. There are no vague mechanics.
Well, maybe I mean, there's a bit of luck in the ball phase. Aren't those the orbs? Aren't they randomly selected? That's what I'm thinking of. No.
I don't think so. I mean,
wow.
I guess they are random, but there's only 3 options, sure. Really. And that's we've talked about this before. I don't know if this was if this was part of the talk we had in the last episode, but when it comes to randomness, I'm usually okay with randomness as long as the player can easily understand the randomness. So with there only being 3 outcomes, you know that there is a 33% chance for each outcome, assuming everything's universally distributed. As such, I'm usually okay with that. I have another thing about randomness that I can bring up at some point, but I don't think it's that one doesn't really matter in this case. So maybe you would give erratic outcomes like a 2. I actually don't remember what the highest score was. I think it was 4.
3 or 4.
Yeah. So maybe give erratic outcomes a 2, but like even then, it's really not that bad. Inactive gameplay, you might argue, you might also give that a 2, mainly because of that same attack, because you can't really attack the boss, but at least you're dodging around. So I don't know. I wouldn't. I might be hard pressed to give it a 2, like maybe a 1.5 kind of thing.
That's a good question.
And then and then lackluster telegraphing, I think definitely a 1 here. I don't think there's a single attack that isn't well telegraphed in Nightmare King Grim.
No, that might be.
I don't know what you think about that.
No, I'm thinking about it. You might be right that he's very, very well telegraphed.
Yeah, those are kind of the big things about Nightmare King Grim that I love. He starts to feel, the whole fight just starts to feel like a dance that just feels really really good. It kind of reminds me of Sisters of Battle.
Yeah, I get why.
Because you just because the Grim version of that fight feels a little slow.
Yes.
Yeah, I tend to like Nightmare King Grim more because it's a bit faster paced. Everything feels it feels much more like a dance. And that's actually kind of the theme of the first fight with him, is kind of like this. There's this sort of performance. You have an audience, and yeah, it's just fun.
Right. He's bowing to the audience as well. He is performing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are sort of my points. Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to name your number 5?
The question is if we should talk. I mean, do you want me to respond to any of that, or what do you think?
Oh, you can respond to it if you have more to say. Definitely respond.
So yeah. I mean, I guess the first thing I should say, probably, or else this might not make any sense, is that I think firstly, I think what you said made a lot of sense, and I think Grim is a great fight. Is it specifically Nightmare King, or is it them both? Are you lumping them together?
Specifically
Okay.
No, yeah, specifically Nightmare King.
Okay.
I do bring Grim up a little bit just because I feel like, he is sort of related, but
sure.
Yeah, it's mainly that I love Grim, a lot, But I like Nightmare King Grim more because it just feels faster. I feel like it feels a lot more like a dance.
Yeah.
It feels more interactive. I think if Grim felt that way, I would probably like Grim more. Mainly because of the music, actually. I like the soundtrack for Grim more than I like Nightmare King Grim's music.
That's interesting.
I
didn't know they had
different thing, but yeah, they
themes.
do, and I really, really love Grimm's more.
Fair enough. I mean, so that's my main probably issue with the entirety of these kinds of top fives. I mean, I think people usually do rankings in any sense, whether it be a tier list or a top five or a bottom five, whatever. Do them based off usually just intuition about something which I think can be defined in many ways, so better or worse. And the question for me is, I mean, you can do it without being cognizant about what you're actually ranking the bosses on. And I would actually like to hear what you think makes sense. But for me, when I'm ranking a boss, how much I like to play against the boss is different from how well I think maybe it's not different from how well I think it's made, but in some ways it is, because it's something like False Knight is hard to make really, really engaging for a very skilled player, but it's also hard to make the boss better, quote unquote, by making it just harder, because it's obviously made for a specific purpose. And then if you bring music into it as well, you're definitely talking either about something else than combat, or you're widening the scope, which you can do. For me, I'm just curious about what you are ranking the boss based off, because then, I mean, it's fine if we have our separate criteria. I would just love to know what they are, because I mean, I don't want to disagree with you if we're just talking from different evaluation criteria. So what are you kind of thinking about in a boss?
Yeah, that's actually very fair. This is interesting because I do like to separate my sort of critical point of view when it comes to kind of reviewing something, and sort of like a more what's the word? Subjective point of view, where maybe when I look at it critically, it's not very good, but for some reason I enjoy it and I can't explain it. Usually that the subjective, it's very difficult to explain why you like something when you like it subjectively. I would say, I mean, I will admit that my list is probably a slight mix of both. It might be more subjective than objective, to be fair, in a sense, because I'm not considering. So to your point about False Knight, I think False Knight is an excellent boss, especially for the purpose that it serves. So this might be more this might admittedly be more of a subjective list than a critical list, although I can still speak critically on my, let's say, subjective list, and I do have critical points to make about them. But yeah, I don't know. Were you purely critical in your list?
So I think what you're saying is basically my position as well, in the sense that, I mean, there are many different ways to look at this. I think in one sense, it's all subjective, because all I can do is analyze the world from my point of view. But I totally get what you're saying. In my view, the reason this is even interesting is because I think there has to be a link between what we think is fun or cool or impressive subjectively and what is, and there has to be some reason, I believe, and it's not fully substantiated, because I do share your view about False Knight, that it might be hard to come up with a better version of False Knight, and yet I would never ever consider putting him in my top 5. Spoilers, but there is something there's something about that where I'm trying to analyze why that is, because in some sense that feels like, it's just subjective. I think there is a reason. I think maybe there are many reasons, but one reason might be, and that's something I've been thinking about, if you have an easy boss, it's usually easier to make that boss fun, at least in Hollow Knight, But if you have a very tough boss, you're quickly bridging the line between frustrating and, thrilling, engaging fight. So if you have a really successful boss, like Grim, for example, who's fun but difficult, I just think generally that's more impressive than the False Knight design. But I don't know if that captures all the variants, and I don't know if you could ever... I don't know if that explains why I wouldn't put False Knight at the top.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, it's gonna be so funny, by the way, when we go through. And I'm interested to see your list too. But when we go through my list, because you mentioned difficulty, and I really am going to try not to spoil my list, but like the difficulties curve of my list is pretty sporadic, I will say.
Okay, interesting.
So I don't think a difficult boss. What I can say is that a difficult boss is not the thing that makes a boss good for me, at least.
No,
and it's not the thing that puts it on my list.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't deny the fact that a challenging boss is still also fun for me.
Yeah, that might be it. Because it might be the challenging element. And then the question is just, where are you in the game? So perhaps someone who starts out and plays the first 3 bosses will have a favorite of those 3. And, he can't really talk about anything else because he hasn't gotten to that point. But there's a bias because we've played the whole game.
Yeah, it's tough.
Maybe these are little details. I mean, they are in some sense, but it's interesting to kind of talk about them.
You know what? I think we should talk about this after we've revealed our list and then see what we can extrapolate. Because I think this is a really good conversation. But I think we'll be a lot more informed to talk about this.
Idea. Yeah, it's a good point.
After we've, yeah. So, I'm interested in this conversation. Definitely, I think we should definitely explore this right after.
All right. Well, let me then quickly just say, for your Nightmare, I think that Nightmare King Grim, you touched on all the important points, and I'm actually struggling to come up with counter arguments because I feel like I made a video about my top 10 bosses, which I hope you haven't watched, or else you're gonna get spoiled.
Oh, that's funny. I have not watched it. Yeah.
And I went back to it and looked, and I believe. Actually, I didn't go back properly because I forget. But I think I had. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna spoil. But Grim was in there somewhere, and I was listening to my own reasoning. But I forgot what my critical view was on Grim. He's a blast, and there are times where it shows with Grim, just the normal Grim, because he's gone for a long time and he's a bit slower. So there are times where that teleporting enemy trope can get a little bit annoying, but Grim Nightmare King he's so quick that it's hard for me to say it's an annoying.
Yeah, you just don't feel that as much as, because I know what you're talking about with Grim. I definitely feel that, especially as a more experienced player, because your reaction time improves so much as you get later into the game.
Yeah. That
Grim feels really, really sluggish.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's a problem. King Grim. Yeah, and Nightmare King Grim doesn't have that problem to the same extent.
No.
If at all, depending on.
Well, so here's one thing. Let me ask you one thing about Grim, which I just remembered about Nightmare King, because I actually really want you to defend this point. So, what do you think about the spike attack?
Oh, I love the spike attack.
That's crazy. I really want you to. I want to hear why, because he disappears from the arena, and I don't understand that.
So he disappears from the arena, which is fine. Okay, I do see what you're saying, because so all you can do is dodge, and you can't attack it.
Right.
So what I will say about that, I don't think that a boss needs to be. There doesn't always have to be an action that takes place onto a boss while they're attacking, as long as that attack doesn't happen often. And I think the spike attack doesn't happen often enough that becomes an issue. Kind of for the same reason that I mentioned about with Grim, he's very slow and he disappears, and it feels like a long time between the next time you can attack. the spikes happen so fast that, you know, the spikes will happen and then he appears and then you can attack him, or you can wait for that next attack and then attack him right after. I just feel like the Nightmare King Grim gets away with these issues that would normally be really bad for other bosses because of how fast he is. And I think that matters.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to say because I don't know, it's just the speed just feels so good to me.
I get that, and I do think that is actually perhaps a counterpoint. If you have a boss who's very slow, it hurts more for that downtime to be there. In my view, I think there has to be... The problem for me is that such an attack, at some point, I don't know if I'm there yet, but for some players, I've heard them talk about the annoyance of having to wait 2.5 seconds for that attack to be over, because they know exactly what's going to happen. They faced that attack 1,000 times. They're going to stand a bit to the side, dodge the attack, wait for the boss to return, and there's nothing they can do to make that go faster. And it feels like a nitpick in some sense, but for me, understanding what makes a boss fun has to be a bit nitpicky, because the problem is if you're at the right skill level, I think that attack is actually just fine. If you're a bit above, it just gets boring, and that's why I think bosses in Hollow Knight are generally so well designed, because you can always do a little more in so many circumstances. But that one attack, and what puzzles me is that Grim stays in the arena for that attack, but Nightmare King doesn't, and I've never understood why.
Yeah, I would. It's a good point, because Grim, as you say, he stays for that attack, and you can actually attack him.
Yes.
In that moment, I do it all the time. You can either use Vengeful Spirit, or you can dash through the spikes and get a hit in on them. Yeah, you can. It's actually funny, because basically you have iframes for a certain amount of time, and if you time it correctly, by the time you lose your iframes, the spikes are already down, and he's still up.
Oh,
like he's still there, and you can sneak an attack on him. You could do either way, and that feels really good when you learn that as a more experienced player. But in Nightmare King Grim, you do make a good point. I think, I honestly could not give you a counterpoint. I think the thing that I like about it so much is that, because of how fast it is, it feels very satisfying to, like, he does it, and there's almost no, it's obviously telegraphed because you see the spikes coming before they come, but the telegraph is a lot harder to see because Nightmare King Grim doesn't appear the way Grim does. The tell for Grim is that he appears, he does this animation that shows that he's about to do the thing, and then it comes.
Sure.
But then Nightmare King Grim skips that step, making that telegraph harder to see before it actually happens.
That's interesting.
And I think that's what makes it more difficult.
Yeah.
And maybe that is why I feel like it feels better. I shouldn't say better. It feels good because it's faster. And I think he gets away with not appearing because of this fact, because that lack of appearance has a purpose, if that makes sense.
Yes. Well, if that's true, if it does take more time for... I know it does take more time for him to do the attack, but if the appearance of the boss is part of that delay of a attack, that would be interesting, because I can see why then Team Cherry would have made it like that. I'm just curious in the first place, like, why does he disappear? It's not my point. I saw someone talk about it, but that would make sense. Then the question just remains whether it was the best design decision.
Yeah, and then for that question, where I may concede is maybe you still can have Grim appear, Nightmare King Grim appear, do that same animation that Grim does, and just make the whole thing faster. I mean, technically you can do that, and maybe you can make that argument. But I think. Yeah, I think that telegraphing is still a lot easier than the way it is now. And again, this kind of comes down to, like, what do you kind of like want to balance? between, higher difficulty potentially and maybe something that is easier or more familiar, because again, those spikes in Grim, you're familiar with, by this point at least, you're familiar with Grim appearing, doing that animation to show the spikes, and then
Sure.
the spikes coming up. But then when you get it for the first few times playing against Nightmare King Grim, it feels new. There's sort of a novelty to it, because now he's not appearing doing that same animation.
That's true.
If he had been, then you would kind of just know what to expect, and it might be a little bit easier because you have that sort of, it's almost like you've already learned that move, and it's kind of just like a faster version of it. Whereas the way it is now, it feels just a little bit newer, just a little bit different, and that's what makes it a little bit harder, because now you have to get used to this new telegraph.
You know what? That's really interesting. I think we could honestly talk about this for hours, because what I'm thinking about now is that's kind of like the reverse of my, what is it, my vague mechanics in the evil boss design. There,
right.
The vague mechanics sacrifice the early parts of the boss fight for having a cool boss later, in some sense, because you don't really know what's going on at the beginning, and then the boss gets better. But this is kind of sacrificing the long term of the fight for having a cool beginner moment, which I do agree with you. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was a bit puzzled the first few times. So I get that part as well. But then, are you sacrificing something for the 100th time the player fights a boss and they know the drill by now? That's the question.
Right. Yeah, that is a good question. That's, it's funny because I am that person.
Yeah.
And when I play it, I don't feel peeved by it, but I guess I haven't really thought of it either. What I will say is, as a very experienced player, and right now, I will say that Nightmare King Grim is very easy for me. I basically can't lose to this boss at this point. But I maybe when I was perhaps 1 or 2 tiers lower in skill level, I would say that was when Nightmare King Grim was the most fun to fight against.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That's
mainly because everything still felt really fast for me. Now not so much.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that's revealing, because I kind of feel the same way. I'm still quite intimidated by the boss, but there is some element of, as soon as he's in the first frame of some attack animation, you're going to be able to get like 1 or 2 hits on him, and then there'll be a grace period where you can't do anything, where you're waiting around, and that it's in some sense that can be felt, I feel.
Yeah, I just wonder, am I bothered by it? When I play it, I'm not as bothered by it. I don't know, because man, no, I can't. There's another boss that has something similar to what we're talking about, but it's actually happens to be one of the bosses in my list here, and I don't want to bring it up. Maybe we could talk about that too when we get there. But
for sure,
yeah.
Let me move on then, because I would love to hear it, and I'm stalling.
Sure.
So I'm sorry about that. Did you have anything?
No worries.
Okay, so we're so good. I mean, I don't know what it's a sign of. It's probably a sign of a good game, but I'm glad we can talk so much about every little detail. It's fascinating.
Oh yeah, this is great. It's really fun.
For sure.
It's crazy that we've already gone. I don't even know how long it's been. Maybe 20 or 30 minutes.
I think about.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on one boss. That's funny.
We'll see how far we get. I mean, I think there was a little voice in the back of my mind screaming like, you're not going to be able to get through 10 bosses, but we'll see. Maybe we have overlaps. Okay, so
yeah, we'll see.
My criteria, I took them from that top 10 video I mentioned, where I ranked the top 10 bosses. I haven't thought them out to great extent. I mean, neither have I really with the evil scale or anything else. It's all pretty much intuition, but I just wanted to mention them because I'm primarily ranking them off of how much fun I have playing against the boss, and I'm being very what might you say, bold, and grounding that in a belief that there's something actually to these bosses. You can explain why do people generally not put Moss Charger at their top 5? Why is that generally not the case? So I think there is some way to explain it, although I'm not claiming to know the exact reasons. So I had just 5 quick reasons, and they are in order, I think, why I like a boss. I like a boss if they allow me to respond to the boss, which is my biggest pet peeve. If the boss does a repositioning move where I feel like I can't read a stimulus and then have a response. So I like telegraphs, basically. Then if the boss has low RNG, that's my second criterion. Then if the boss is intuitive, so I read an attack and I think, okay, the boss is drawing back his or her nail. I'm supposed to get out of the way right in front of me because the boss is going to strike there. Right. I can read it even if it's just my second time or whatever against the boss. And then number 4 is low downtime. I mean, some of these do mimic actually the evil scale, but low downtime just meaning I want to be able to interact with the boss. And I think if the boss has a really complex attack or a cool, kind of like the fireballs in Grim, I think they are actually stimulating to a point where that doesn't feel quite like downtime where you're just standing around, but it's still not as good in my book as being able to strike the boss. And then finally, I do actually put difficulty on the list, but only because I qualify it by saying, I think if you have a boss that's really fun and a boss that's really fun at the same level, but the one is more difficult, I value that boss more highly because, as I said before, I think that takes more skill. It's harder to design a difficult boss. That's also fair and fun. So
it's also more rewarding
to defeat the boss.
Perhaps to defeat a boss that is difficult.
Yes. Well, I agree, but then the problem is kind of it's a zone of proximal development for me, because if you're a new player, the perfect amount of challenge and reward will probably be False Knight and not Grim. But then I agree with you in the final picture. The harder boss is definitely more rewarding. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely another conversation we can have.
That's great. I mean, I think we have plenty to talk about, and I think it's wonderful. We could talk forever. Yeah. So my number 5th, and I actually clumped them together in the video. Can't remember why I did that. Just because probably a lot of the bosses I was ranking my top 10, and a lot of the bosses are so similar that I didn't want my number 5th and number 6th place to be the same boss twice if I really like the boss, because you have a boss like Hornet, for example, who is, I would say, pretty close. Unless you're really thinking about difficulty, then there's a lot of difference, but the main mechanics are similar. So my number 5 is Broken Vessel, actually, and then / Lost Kin.
Ooh.
Which is weird for me.
That's a good one.
I think I never thought that boss would be so high for me. Just to explain why, I really don't like when bosses reposition without a proper telegraph. And I think Lost Kin is probably the worst example in the entire game, or the best example of a boss who doesn't show you where he's about to go or when he's about to go. He just goes. And that's probably his most powerful attack. Yeah. But I just love fighting him. I love smacking him around. There's so little downtime. And it's fun to fight the balloons, to get more soul to cast spells at the boss. So I wonder what you think about that.
I couldn't agree more. I do empathize to an extent about your grievances about his sort of erratic movement. But I also, we've had a long discussion about that topic. I disagree, but I do empathize because, again, we had that whole discussion and you made some great points. I wish we recorded that, but we didn't. On hindsight, maybe we should have. But to your point about one of your points being very low downtime, there is pretty much, I think Lost Kin, there's like zero. I have to say it's zero downtime. I don't think there's. Like that. Yeah, I feel like there's always an opportunity to attack him. It just, and it's so fun when you maximize the number of attacks.
Yes.
He's among my favorite bosses for sure. We'll see if he actually makes my list. We'll see about that. But nice. Yeah, he's definitely among my favorite bosses. Like I still I still go into Godhome and fight against him from time
Yeah.
to time because I just
Just
enjoy
fun.
him. He's such a good boss.
Yes, and
Yeah,
I
very
definitely
fun.
had an ideological disposition to be opposed to him. So I think I put him at the bottom, at like top 10. I knew he was going to be on my list because he's good, but he was at the bottom. And then I just had to be honest with myself and realize that when I fought him, I was having a lot more fun fighting him than I did some other bosses. So I had to bump him up.
Right.
And I think it's the low downtime. And does he have any other major benefits? I mean, the balloons do spawn a bit randomly, which is a problem, I think, if you're at the level where you need to heal. I really don't like that. A balloon can spawn right on you. But otherwise, I actually think he's quite low in RNG, because no matter what attack he does, maybe perhaps except jumping, you can respond. And even if you're good enough, you can respond to his jump pretty easily. So, yeah.
The good thing about the balloons, though, and to be fair, this is perhaps more true once you reach a certain skill level, particularly with this boss. But the balloons, they do telegraph their spawning before they fully spawn. So you can oftentimes what happens. Actually, I understand this more intuitively than, I guess, critically or intellectually, because I don't know how I do it exactly. But intuitively, when I'm playing against Lostkin, I know when the balloons are going to spawn.
Yeah.
So usually what I'll do is I'll wait until Lostkin has his sort of downtime, so he uses an attack and then a balloon spawns. I'll kill the balloon really quickly and then heal if I need to.
Okay.
This was actually, so this is doable, by the way. I know this because there was a time where I was at this sort of skill level where I was good enough to do this, to time my healing against Lostkin, but not good enough to not get hit by Lostkin. So I was getting hit a lot, and I wasn't confident enough in my ability to dodge his attacks.
Sure.
To not heal and use my spells instead. So I did get to this point where I was starting to learn how to time the healing, and yeah, I can say that it is definitely possible. But you just have to reach that point.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So I was just gonna say, but yeah, it's one of those things where I still empathize with your point because, there is randomness to that, and I think you and I both agree. Generally, RNG should be very limited, minimized in game design.
Yes.
But yeah,
I agree with that. No, and I would say that specifically the RNG point is actually not one of my main contentions. I do think it's a problem. I mean, I agree with you. If you stagger the boss at the right time and then you hit a balloon, there's basically no way you're not going to get a heal in. Then the additional argument would be, no, but I'm trying to get 2 heals in, and the second balloon spawn, I need that to be far enough away from me. I don't know if that's true. That feels true to me, that if you get a good balloon spawn, you can heal twice. But again, I wouldn't fault the boss much for that, because it's not really an issue when you get to a certain point. I feel where you just need to heal once, perhaps, or maybe not at all.
Yeah, I do think there is certain, because what you will notice in some of the earlier bosses is that oftentimes when you stagger them, you can heal twice, maybe even 3 times depending on the boss. I don't have a specific boss in my head that you can do that
I think that's
right now. But I know most of those sort of earlier bosses you can heal twice, but then in the later game when you stagger a boss, you only really have room for 1 heal. And I think Lost Kin might qualify as one of those bosses where when you stagger them, you almost it's almost like you have time for 1.5 heals. I'll say that in quotes, where like most of the time or oftentimes you'll only have time for 1 heal, but sometimes maybe if you get lucky or something, you'll have just the amount of time for 2 heals.
Totally, I totally agree. But that's my main contention, and my main issue with that is exactly that it's about 1.5 healing, and it's a good way to put it, because if I heal and I know I can't get 2 heals or even a single heal, I'm not as bothered by that. But if it's up to luck whether I can heal twice or once over only, that's my problem. I think that's annoying. I think that's kind of RNG. That's an unhealthy.
That's interesting. I actually think it is healthy, mainly because I think there's a certain level of skill required to recognize when you only have time for one heal, or maybe you did get lucky and you can see, hey, I have time for a second heal. I don't know. What do you think?
That's a good point. I mean, there's definitely skill to that. I agree with you partly, but I will still say, let's say, I mean, if it's it's a question of healing. So in this case, it's a bit weird because you could avoid it in some sense if you get good enough. But I'm just thinking about, there's one case. I like RNG mostly when it's, case 1 is pretty tough and case 2 is pretty tough, but they're tough in different ways. If it's case 1, you get a free heal. And maybe that's not quite fair because you're going to save your soul if you don't get the heal. So you do get a benefit from not being allowed to heal, but you're trying to do something and either you succeed or you fail. Right. I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way, but maybe, I see your point.
Yeah, I definitely think, and maybe this is another conversation that we can dig deeper into, but it's just, I have a hard time because there are also situations where and not Lostkin in particular, but in general, certain bosses, I've noticed when I watch other players play against them, they have heal windows that I know about in my head, but they don't realize that they have them, and they think of another heal window. They tend to use another heal window, which is still fine, obviously, but I always think, oh, like they could have healed, like if healing is something they feel the need to do.
Yeah.
If they knew that they could heal at this point, they would be so much better off, but they don't know that they can heal at this point, and it's like that to me is kind of just a knowledge gap. Like you just haven't tried it or haven't experimented with the particular boss, and I feel like that discoverability is part of what makes a boss fun. But then, obviously there's sort of criteria that you would need to that we would need to kind of hash out specifically to really criticize this, because to your point, for Lost Kin, and I'm trying to think, I do think it's pretty random when you can get 2 heals off. But there are certain bosses where you can get heal and most people don't realize it.
Yes,
but that heal is guaranteed, and I know it's guaranteed because I do it all the time.
Sure.
And that might be different from what you're talking about. So yes. I don't know.
So here's what I think. I think all of what you're saying makes perfect sense. My question is, does the RNG make the situation fun or less fun? So just the fact that you know that you can hit the balloon that's already on the screen as the boss staggers and then get a heal in, to me that's perfect. You know that because you know the boss, and you know it's guaranteed to allow you to heal, which is awesome. And then somebody else might not know that, and so on. So that's definitely you using knowledge to get better at the fight, and I think that's awesome. So the question for me is, let's say there were a 15% chance or a 50% chance for you to get a really unlucky balloon spawn, and then you could never heal, for example, because if you got that unlucky chance. So no matter what you knew about the game and no matter how quick you were, in some instances you wouldn't be able to heal, and that's kind of how I see this double heal. It's just the next heal might be up to randomness. To me, I'm just wondering whether is that fun.
I think so. I have sort of, I guess I sort of had 2 parts to my counterpoint on this. The first part would be, and there's no way to really know this unless we kind of modded this in, but what if you only had time to do 1 heal? So let's say the stagger only lasts long enough to do 1 heal, but because of the nature of the boss, there's a random chance that you can't heal at all for the one time. Do you think that would feel better or worse than how it is currently, where you can still get one heal almost guaranteed for the most part, but you might not always get the second heal off?
I think it's worse only because I really like that guaranteed heal, and that element of the comparison is really
right.
I like that. But if you're isolating them, I think they're equally worse. I think that extra, just every time you ask, is it a 50-50 or can you do this if you're good enough?
Do you think there's a time window that is perfect where you could always get the one heal and then never the two heal, given the way the boss is designed currently? That's I guess that's sort of the question that I want to explore, because if that were possible, then maybe I might agree, but I have a feeling that is either it's impossible or it is very difficult to hit right on the nail.
Okay, so that's a good point. To me, maybe a solution could be you have enough space technically for two heals every time, but you gotta be damn precise to get that second heal. So a new player will be able to heal once without too much issue. And if they're really struggling with the fight, they can learn that little quirk. They know exactly, as soon as the stagger frame hits and they hit the other balloon that's already in the arena, they can get two heals. So there's no RNG, but it's not easy. And then it feels like there would be a bit of a leeway there for the developers.
Yeah, I'm just not sure, because I feel like the time window is fine, mainly because even if you don't get the second heal, you have your first heal and then you have time to kind of recollect yourself for the next attack. And I do feel like that part is still important. Sure,
but you always have that option. So I mean, it's a nitpicky thing for me to go attack, because
sure,
you could always, I mean, you get that time and then you can hit the balloon, for example, and get ready for the boss not staggering anymore. It's just that the player might choose to want to heal, and then in one case they get like 100% return on their investment. They are allowed to heal, and in the other they have to either get hit or concede. I can't heal, I have to stop.
Yeah, and then you lose the first heal that you had just done.
Oh yeah, if you get hit.
It's funny because I think it's funny because I think there's I don't think it's a black or white thing either, because I actually think there's a bit of a continuum about this, because what if so we would have to look at the percentages. I don't actually know, but what if you had the first heal that's pretty much guaranteed, right? And then the second heal only happens. So let's say right now, the way it is, that the second heal can happen maybe 50% of the time.
Yes.
What happens when that percentage goes down to, say, 10%? Do we feel the same way?
Well, I would remove the percentages.
But that's the problem, is that, so I guess the point that I'm making is that getting it just right to 0% is near impossible.
Oh, but I mean, to me, that would the solution.
Well, also including the first heal, by the way.
So, see, I see what you mean, but my solution would just be to make the balloons. Okay, there's no just, because I think this is actually a tough. Do you just make the balloon spawn in the same place every time? That's probably a bit too rigid, perhaps. But something like that would be my solution. Maybe have the balloon spawn in 4 separate places on rotation. And then if you're good enough, okay, we're here, the balloon's going to spawn there. But there's no RNG in the balloon spawn. So for me, there probably shouldn't be any percentages, if that makes sense.
Right.
Am I missing something?
Trying to think. I do feel, my intuition says that doing it this way would feel too rigid.
That's definitely
another
a problem.
Potential. Right. Another potential solution could be that the balloon stops spawning while he's staggered.
Yeah, sure.
That way, if a balloon happens to spawn as you're staggering, all you have to do is kill it, and then you're safe for the 2 heals.
That's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, but my only issue with that is that I don't that potentially feels too forgiving. Like I would almost say that if you're going to do that, then only give the player time for one heal.
Sure, you could do that. I think that's more a matter of balance, like the specifics of how hard the fight is going to be, and I might agree with you, rather than the specific, instance of is it fun that you might get an unlucky balloon spawn or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I don't know. I what I will say with my experience personally is that there was something kind of fun about dealing with the balloons. Like
for sure.
I would stagger the boss, and this kind of goes back to the boss each boss is always going to be a different experience depending on your skill level. And I can say that my experience with each boss now is very different from my experience with each boss 1, 2, 3 years ago.
Sure.
And I remember there was a point when I was fighting Lostkin where there was sort of this weird, it was this sort of this dynamic between me and the boss where, I'd stagger him, and now I'm like thinking, okay, is the balloon going to come? It probably will come, because by this point I'm starting to have that timer down in my head, the intuition. And what I often do is I'll, depending on the timing, I'll wait for the balloon, kill it, and then get one heal in, and then I won't bother with the second heal because I know that I've given up that timer, knowing that it was going to spawn. Because if I had tried to heal before, then there was a chance that the balloon would spawn close enough to me where I wouldn't be able to heal in time to dodge the balloon or to kill it. And I don't know, there was something about that felt good. Like it just feels it feels sort of like a strategy that I had to kind of come up with. And I feel like if you lose that, then you lose that sort of identity with the boss. But I don't know, that's just kind of my experience with it. I can't help but feel like the randomness is good in this case because, again, I go to my criterion for good cases of randomness is that it's either predictable or it's controllable by the player to some degree. And the randomness, while I can't control or predict exactly where the balloons are going to spawn, I do know when they're going to spawn, and I can make my moves based on the timing. Yeah, that's all I could really say about it, though. There is something about it that just feels good, and I go to that sort of criteria for randomness, and I feel like that is just good.
I think that's very interesting, and I mean I have something to say on this, but it's almost opening a new can of worms. So all you just said made sense to me, and I think it's not a simple issue. Sometimes I get caught in like a way of thinking, and I get critical of my own way of thinking because to me it seems rather simple until I find a way to attack it. So I try to attack my own arguments in that way, and one of my what might you say presuppositions is that RNG should be minimized. If it's possible to create a roughly the same experience, I usually think randomness is not fun. But again, then you have party games. Maybe it's fun there, and maybe you can create something that mimics RNG. So that's where I'll remain open. The question is whether we should continue, or what do you think?
Yeah, we should have a conversation on randomness. That should be a whole podcast episode.
We're generating
Definitely.
So many topics. It's really quite useful.
Yeah, I think randomness specifically should be one that we definitely have on our list, because sure. I tend to agree randomness should be minimized, because I generally don't like randomness. But there's like, you have roguelikes and roguelites which are a genre that are almost based around, they're almost dependent on randomness. So I don't know, it's a whole thing that yeah, we could definitely explore.
I'm sure we could. That would be a really fun conversation. I'm sure we could burn 2 hours on that alone. All right. So what was your number 4?
Yeah, so so your number 5 was Lost Kin, mine was NKG. My number 4 is Sisters of Battle. I love Sisters of Battle. I actually hate to give this one my number 4 because it's such a good boss fight. Like it almost deserves to be number 1, but there are just so many good bosses. It's just hard to decide. Yeah, Sisters of Battle is just such a masterpiece. I love how quick paced it is. I love how the big thing about Sisters of Battle is the first time you encounter Sisters of Battle is in Godhome in Pantheon 5, and you fight the Mantis Lords, and your I guess your presupposition is that you're just fighting the Mantis Lords, just like how you always fought them.
Yeah.
So you're fighting the first one and you defeat it, and then the two on the side stand up, but then the whole thing pauses, and then the third stands up again, and now they're all like going to attack you. You're fighting all three at the same time, and that whole sequence is just like I love it. It's such a good introduction to a boss fight. It feels dramatic. It feels exciting. You're like kind of scared when it happens the first time because you're realizing, okay, I'm not fighting 2 at a time. Now I'm fighting all 3 of them, and yeah, it's just. And then when you actually do fight them, if it's your first time, you probably lose the fight because it's overwhelming. But then when you start to get a groove and you get good at the boss fight, it just feels like such a dance. Yeah, it just feels so good to play against. It's fast. This is one where, similar to NKG, to your sort of 4 deadly sins of bosses, this is another boss that very closely reaches a perfect score in my opinion.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's just such a good boss fight.
I totally agree. I hope not totally, but we'll see. In terms of where I put it, if it's even here, I think you have some really interesting analyses, because I was thinking right there, that's what you're describing is just what you said at the beginning about having an intro and a setup that's really overwhelming or intimidating or fascinating in some way. And I totally agree. Well, the problem for me is I think I actually had the Sisters of Battle spoiled because it was my own fault. I think I watched some Hollow Knight content before I finished the game, because I usually do not do that. But in my case, I could only wait so long because I really took a long time to beat Pantheon 5, and I didn't make it. So
yeah,
I had a few bosses undiscovered, which I had spoiled. But still, that feeling of I think I checked it not too long ago, and it says Mantis Lords when you start the fight. I think it might say that, and then once
it does.
It really tries to cheat you into thinking it is just the one or the 3. But then it's the 1 and then the 3. And yeah, I agree. It's an awesome battle. I totally agree with all you're saying. I don't really have anything to add, probably.
Awesome. Well, I did have a question because we were talking about how with NKG, we talked about this at length. You have a lot of downtime with NKG oftentimes when, he's disappearing and stuff. The Sisters of Battle have this to a very slight extent, and I'm curious if you feel that with Sisters of Battle, or is it so fast with Sisters of Battle that you really don't feel that?
Oh my god, you're touching on exactly probably my only criticism. I have one other small criticism of the boss, but I actually agree with you. I agree that there's, especially when it's just the one Mantis, it feels weird because it's so well made for earlier parts of the game, but if you really look at it, you can hit the boss, I think I can hit maybe I'm missing something, but usually you can hit the boss like twice, maybe thrice, and then she will teleport off screen, and then you have just, it's like less than a second or something, but that time adds up for me. It when there's one mantis, and maybe even when there are two, I feel like when all three are on screen, I don't feel that. It's too intense. So, but what do you think about that?
Definitely, when I do agree, when all three are on screen, it's like, everything feels really fast. It feels really good. I feel like I'm always attacking or doing something to get make progress in the fight.
Absolutely.
And then when it reaches one, you do reach this sort of lull where it's kind of, okay, let me just get through this last one. And yeah, I don't know. I think I think the disappearance, because the thing is that the theme of the boss is that it's supposed to be really fast, and the mantis lords are supposed to feel fast.
Yeah.
And their quote unquote teleportation is actually them, from a lore perspective, them just moving really fast, right? Because they're like kind of dashing and all that stuff.
Yes.
And I feel like it becomes okay because of the thematics of the fight. But
yeah,
again, that's sort of a weird stretch that is like, I don't know. I don't know that I can make that argument seriously, as sort of like a general rule.
No, right. And to me, that's my issue, which always makes me sound so. I think I sound arrogant, and maybe even no. It's probably more like ungrateful. You sound so ungrateful when you look at Sisters of Battle, or I feel like I do, and I think, well, it's not. Well, have you really done everything you could? It's at some point it really does get to the point where you should probably just say shut up and enjoy the fight, because it's really good. But for me, it's not about that 0.75 seconds so much as it's about what's the core of what makes the boss fun. Why do people place it so highly? Usually they say like, oh, it's just a personal opinion. Sure, but why does everyone agree about that personal opinion then? Is there some reason? And I think maybe the solution would be, instead of teleporting, I don't mind the teleporting, but instead of teleporting outside the screen, the boss teleports, for example, to the wall. And you could increase the health if it became too easy. But just having the boss in the arena so you can always do something against it. Maybe that little update would make it perfect. I don't know what you think about that.
It might be, but then for a newer player, it might be too much. Because then, we also have to, I think we also have to be empathetic to the fact that your first encounter with the sisters, or sorry, the mantis lords, is pretty early. It's pretty early in the game. It's just before, it's right after you get the mantis claws.
Yes.
And by that point, I imagine that a player's reaction time might not be there yet. If you have the mantis lords moving that fast and attacking that often.
But maybe you're misunderstanding me. I was just thinking the downtime you have, like the second or whatever, 2 seconds in the first fight, that downtime, I'm just thinking about putting the mantis lord inside of the arena, idling, instead of going outside the arena. So the attacks would come at the same pace. But you know how before and after the lords throw their glaives, they sit on the wall for an additional second. I'm thinking about just, you put the mantis there, and then when she's ready to attack, you can drag her in again. I don't think that would make the fight harder.
I think that will make that fight feel slower.
Oh, really?
Even if it's not technically slower, I think it'll feel slower for the player.
Why do you think that?
Mainly because if the mantis lord is just sitting there, so the idea is that when it comes to a quote unquote fast boss fight, boss fights are never truly that fast. They always give you a feel of fastness, of speed.
Okay.
Using kind of like what's the word? They kind of deceive you into thinking they're faster than they are, basically. And I think this teleportation with speed involved is the reason why even Mantis Lords, like not Sisters of Battle, but Mantis Lords, that fight feels fast.
Yes.
Because the mantises are dashing everywhere. They're constantly moving in and out of your view.
Sure.
When that happens, you get this sense of it's kind of like I don't know if you watch like cartoons or anime or whatever, but you see in those shows where there's a particularly fast character that what they'll often do with those characters is that they'll move in and out of screen really fast. But there's always sort of a downtime between each attack. But you have that illusion that they're fast because you see them dashing around and going crazy instead of like spamming attacks all over. And sometimes they do that too, but oftentimes they'll show a character's speed by making it so that they go in and out of the frame multiple times in a series of attacks.
That's interesting.
And I feel like that's sort of a similar idea with Sisters of Battle.
You know what? That's a great point. I think that's really interesting, and I never thought about that in terms of Hollow Knight bosses, whether they deceive you like that. Because I'm thinking, first of all, it's just part of the design. It's not. It's a byproduct that they feel fast. Maybe you even wanted them to feel slower because it's so intimidating, but perhaps not. Maybe it's. It's fun at some level that the boss feels so fast, and especially if you could do that without the boss actually being fast. I think that's fascinating. So here's my quick counterpoint, and maybe this is not right. I'm just curious what you think. If the boss first teleported to the wall and then had to teleport back, sure, you are sort of keeping the boss on screen, which makes it feel like it's maybe going slower, but you are also moving it twice. It feels like the boss might be moving around more than just disappearing and then reappearing. Instead, it's going to the wall and then going back. You see it in more places. I don't know, in my mind, it feels like that might make up for the loss in speed.
Yeah, perhaps it would. Do you think that might be that might hurt the randomness value if the mantis could teleport to a random part of the wall, or do you think that would be okay because it's going to be on the wall?
I think it should be set probably. Within some limits, it could be random. Actually, I think this might not be true, but I feel like... No, that's not true. Sorry. When they jump to the wall to throw the glaive, I feel like that might be random, but I just at some point had a thought that it might be based on your own height. It's probably not.
Right. It's I haven't fully understood it yet, but it's actually not random. It is based on the player's position. For the most part, for like 90% of the time, the mantises will appear on one of two parts of the wall, of each wall. Always. Okay. But if you're on the wall, the game will try to make it so that the mantises don't appear on where you are.
Sure.
So they'll put them on like weird spots on the wall.
Oh, that's interesting.
On the other side of the wall, or on the same wall but away from the knight. I haven't figured out exactly how that part works.
Fair enough.
But I know that that is like one of the only sort of edge cases. But if you're on the platform and sort of in the center, it will always be the same. Like there's one of two spots on each wall that the mantises will spawn.
I was okay, that's enlightening actually. I was thinking about something similar to that. So maybe I'm just thinking the mantis teleports to one edge of the arena, then does the lance dash, and then jumps to the wall, for example. Maybe teleports. I don't know what would make sense, but keeping that motion and standing on the wall for a second, and then teleporting into a new attack immediately. Would that? So that could
feel good.
That might feel slower. It's a really good question, but I don't know. What you think.
I don't know. Maybe it might even feel faster, just because you can still see the mantis moving. It feels like the mantis is moving even more.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
That's a good question.
That's a potentially good solution to that problem. At least for people who see it as a problem, I don't know that everyone sees that as an issue with the downtime that the mantis lords have. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, so I'm critical of people not seeing something, because sometimes, and that's the arrogance again, that sometimes I feel like when people don't see something,
Sure.
it's because perhaps they're at a level where they don't need that additional attack. They're preoccupied enough with just the regular fight. But I'm open to there being an argument for it being fun that the boss disappears from the arena. I would love to hear that argument, though, because unless you hold that view, I struggle to see why keeping the boss inside the arena is not fun. I can see why it gets easier and so on, but why is it fun to have complete downtime, forced downtime?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. I don't tend to say that. I tend to agree with you that forced downtime is generally bad. I feel like in the case of Mantis Lords, or Sisters of Battle, it might be quote unquote okay just because of the theme, and I mentioned why before. But then of course, to your point,
sure.
If you can make it so that you reduce that or you eliminate the downtime entirely while still maintaining the speed and the theme of the boss fight, I think that would be a good thing.
I totally agree with you on both of those points. And I think if it serves as a secondary purpose of making the boss fight feel quicker, that's at least an argument for forced downtime, because there's a purpose. If it's just about the downtime, that's where I get confused, and I would love to hear an argument. But just from maybe someone in the comments holds that view. Yeah,
I think that I do tend to agree with you that people who don't see this as an issue or potentially an issue are either, perhaps to your point, not at the perhaps the skill level to take on a boss fight that reduces that downtime.
Yeah.
Or that they just aren't at that that critical level, I guess, to think about that.
They don't get that's the one thing, but they don't get annoyed at it yet because they're not that overconfident. That's the one thing. And then as you say, the other thing might be they hold that view, but they just don't know it yet, which sounds very arrogant, but
but and the other thing to that point too is that this sort of this criticizing of downtime, especially to this level, like we're talking about Sisters of Battle, that this boss fight is a fast battle.
Yes.
Even, considering the downtime that you do have.
Yes.
That this only really matters for players of a certain skill level.
For sure. Definitely. So here's my thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to hear
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it might be connected like this. If you have forced downtime, you're forced into pleasing a very narrow group of players, and that might not be exactly right actually, because everyone who's below the required skill level, they're probably not going to be annoyed. But it's only the players above the skill level of that's expected to complete the fight or to get good at the fight. You're gonna annoy them at no matter how short you make that downtime. The only fix that scales, in my mind, is putting the boss there. Because then the only thing that could bore the player is if they actually found the act of hitting the boss boring. And then at that point, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't play the game. Maybe you're just, tired of playing the game. It's like, what do you want from there? So.
Maybe the game is not for you at that point.
Right, sure. It might be it.
It's funny because, in my experience personally, I consider myself a pretty good player. I'm pretty good at Hollow Knight. I'm at the point where, I've beaten Absolute Radiance in Radiant difficulty multiple times. Like, it's not, I haven't done it just as a one-time thing or a two-time thing. Like, I've done it multiple times. I even did for a short amount of time. I didn't keep going because it kind of got boring. But I did a little challenge where I was sacrificing Absolute Radiance in Radiant difficulty every day until Silksong comes.
Oh my
I did that for like 2 weeks or something.
No way.
But eventually I was like, insane. I did it. Yeah. And I did it every day it was only for like 2 weeks, but like, I could do it. And
wow.
Eventually I kind of got tired of it. But Yeah,
Get
it's
that.
just you get to a point where you're really good at the game, but at least in my own experience, as someone who is really good at the game, or at least pretty dang
I
good at the
think that's
game,
pretty dang good. Yeah.
um, yeah, uh, I actually don't feel this with Sisters of Battle. Like I don't feel
Interesting.
the downtime at least not until I reach the last sister.
Yeah.
Like if I've beaten both of the sisters and now I'm down to the last one, at that point it does really feel slow. But
sure.
usually when I'm at that point, if I'm really bored, I can just use my spells to quicken the fight, and it'll be over really quickly.
Sure. And it's
So I don't know.
no, for sure.
I feel like that slowness is necessary to my point about newer players from earlier. But
Well,
yeah,
but
I don't know. What do you
but
think?
that last argument I disagree with, because I wouldn't increase the fight. The difficulty of the fight. I would just make the boss have her hitbox stay in the arena for longer. So I agree with that, but I don't
that's
think
true.
that's a counter.
Yeah. Right. You're right. No, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I actually see your point there. That's true.
But I agree with you otherwise. It might scale. It might just be that, at one Mantis Lord, if you're really well accustomed to the fight, it's you can feel it. And then at 2 Mantis Lords, you probably don't get annoyed. And then at 3, you don't feel it. So I feel like that's how I experienced the fight, although I can't remember. But if that's true, if you do get more annoyed, the simpler the fight, that would suggest to me that it's just a continuum. And at some point, what's the ultimate ideal? That might be you don't have any downtime, and then you can do whatever you want. You can hit the boss, or you can recover if you need that. Is it my 4th now then?
Yeah, you're number 4.
Unless you had anything else for Sisters of Battle.
No, that was it actually.
It's a good fight. I do agree
Yeah,
with you
very
there.
good fight. I love it.
All right. Well, I have, maybe this is a strange pick. I actually don't think I see these guys this high up usually, but I have, for number 4, I have Oro and Mato, the Nail Masters.
Oh,
brothers.
the Nail Masters.
Yeah, maybe a bit
That's
of a hot
fun.
take.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think this is where maybe Broken Vessel kind of reveals this about me, but I don't think people think this way. I think this fight really reveals this about me, and it's that I'm boring in some sort of way in these in my analyses of these bosses, because what I want is just I want a boss who's predictable, and who I can just hit, most of the time. That is to say, just I don't really care about glamour to the same degree that I think people usually do, and that's not quite true, because if we were rating the boss on some other scale, I'm thinking mostly about gameplay. Something like Sisters of Battle or Nightmare King Grim having introductions and having personality and story, that would matter so much more to me than just pure gameplay. But if it's just about the gameplay, the reason Oro and Mato make the spot is just I love standing next to, I think it's Oro you fight first, perhaps? I don't remember. I think it is. And then hitting the boss.
Yeah, I don't remember.
And then he does either he jumps or he swipes at me, and I can respond to either of those attacks, and it feels, each attack feels roughly equally hard to respond to. And I can pretty easily counter. I can dash over and hit the boss if he strikes at me. And if he jumps, I can jump up and hit him from below before he falls to the ground. So there's little downtime. And every time the boss is kind of boring and they're not using nail arts, that's where I'm having fun. So I feel like I'm strange in this regard, but I wonder how much you like Oro and Mato.
Oh, I really like Oro and Mato. They're not among my favorites, but I do think they're a fun boss. They're engaging. To your point, there is no downtime with them really, because they're always on the stage, and you can always attack them. They're a solid boss fight in my opinion. Especially because one of the fun things about them that I really like is you start with fighting just one, and I think you're right. I think it was Oro.
Okay.
I'm second guessing myself now, but anyways, but you fight one of them and you quote unquote defeat the one first.
Yes.
And then the Matzo comes and appears, and now you had to fight both of them. This is sort of the same effect that Sisters of Battle have. Where you're fighting the one, and then you're about to fight the two, but now you're fighting the three.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh shoot, now I gotta fight three. But in this case, it's like you're fighting one of your. And the reason why I feel like this is an impactful fight is because these bosses were like your teachers to a point. Like they were the ones who taught you how to fight. They taught you the nail arts basically. Mm-hmm. So it feels that much more impactful. Like these are nail fighters to be respected, and now you're fighting one of them. Mm-hmm. And now you have to fight two of them, so it's kind of like a big deal. There's that. I think the theatrics are, when there aren't theatrics in a boss fight, I think it makes it that much more special. Because to me, a boss fight is, I like it when developers kind of break the mold and treat boss fights as more than just a challenge for the player. I just love that about the two. But yeah, I think overall it's an engaging boss fight. It's fun. I will say that there's a certain level of skill that you get to, at least for me personally, where I felt that I lost the fun of fighting these two.
Interesting.
Where it just becomes maybe too easy, and I don't feel as engaged fighting them.
That's really interesting.
But I do know that my first few experiences fighting the boss were very, very good. I enjoyed fighting them a lot.
That's so interesting, because if you find Oromato easy, and then to the point even that the fight is kind of boring, that really limits your pool of good bosses. I feel like unless you're not rating them based on combat, because damn, I feel like they're like one of the hardest bosses in the game.
So it's funny because I think, and you say that it's like one of the hardest bosses. The funny thing is about these games is that everyone struggles with their own bosses.
That's true.
And what was hard for you might have been really easy for me, and then vice versa.
Yeah.
I actually found one boss that was notoriously very easy for the majority of the player base.
Yeah.
I found it very difficult for me, and it was Marmu, I think is her name.
I agree.
She's
tough.
Yeah, the caterpillar or snail thing that turns into a ball and like flies around. Huh. Yeah, I struggled with that boss a lot. But the other thing too is I think this is sort of inevitable for someone who gets good at the game, that the easier bosses are just not fun anymore. And if you're going to, and this kind of comes down to kind of your ability to be introspective, as well as critical of bosses. Because again, we talked about, for example, False Knight, a very easy boss fight, and obviously one that you and I probably wouldn't enjoy fighting anymore because obviously it's very easy. But we still have a lot of respect for this boss because of what it is for a first-time player, for someone who is first encountering the boss, and I think that's important. And I when it comes to Oromato, I try to talk about it with the same lens.
That's so interesting. I have so many thoughts, but I'll try to limit them to what might be most important. So, one thing I have to say is that you're talking about the significance of them being brothers. That's not what you said. They're nail masters, but for me, and I totally agree that the boss is so cool. Just to talk about your intro setup trigger, heuristic for thinking whether a boss is good or not. I absolutely love, I don't know why, but I love that, just that moment where I think it is Mato dropping down, looking at his brother, and then it's something about them being, not very well acquainted, no, that's the wrong expression, not very good friends in their real life, but in this dream world, in some sense, they've I don't know, you don't know, I mean, they've made up, or they in some sense they're still brothers, so when one is in trouble the other one arrives. That's how I read it, and it feels so special. It's almost sentimental that they're fighting alongside each other, and they die, they're defeated at the same time.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I haven't thought of that. I think it's a great point too.
I saw someone talk about it, and to me that made the fight so much more special. They lock eyes for a second before they attack you, and I think there is something about them being, one of them is consumed by riches or something, and the other one is more they don't like each other, and they're judging each other all the time. And then Shio is like the elder brother who's a bit more wise. I think there's something about that, but again, I do mostly strictly base this on, I hope to base this on pure gameplay. So in that regard, I guess I can't really relate to your position about the boss being easy, because I'm still at the point where it's probably, I think, like top 5 hardest bosses in the game. Maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking about this wrong. But trying to defeat that boss on Radiant takes me a while, especially if I'm not using charms. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I won't say I won't say it's an objectively easy boss. It is definitely a difficult one. I just know that I got to a point where, at least for me, it's now become quite easy.
Interesting.
But yeah, like, again,
I get
everyone sort of has their own thing. Yeah.
I will say, we were talking about Sisters of Battle. I was thinking, I think the early parts of Oro and Mato is actually, the early parts are more fun than the early parts of Sisters of Battle, because fighting just Oro, he doesn't teleport anywhere. You can defeat him as quickly as you can, as you have the abilities to, and then you get to the main fight, and then I don't know, it might be an open question which fight is better then, but just the early game I think is more interactive. I don't know if you agree.
That's a good question. You're probably right. I think I would agree.
Yeah, and then the question is it more fun then? Because for me, the criticism of Oro and Mato is that they're very simple, especially when it's just Oro. He has 2 attacks, I think, and then he can jump for the dash slash. But maybe that's why I also kind of tend to think of the Sisters of Battle as at least as interesting, if not more. But it's hard to evaluate an attack. Like, why is the dash attack from the Sisters of Battle, is that more fun than dodging a sword swing from Oro? Man, that's hard to quantify.
Yeah, I will admit, I do think there might be a bit of subjectivity here on my part, because I tend to really, really love fast characters in general, like in shows, or like I think I do have a sort of bias.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, towards speed. But and the other thing too is, to that point, is because Sisters of Battle requires that you have like a kind of a higher reaction time and you're constantly moving, everything feels faster, and that is just so fun for me. Whereas Oromato, at least personally, my experience is more they feel more like Dark Souls type bosses or Elden Ring type bosses, where you kind of have to wait for them a little bit. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. I think you can get around that if you're good enough. I'm not, but every time they do a sluggish attack, you can still attack them, I think.
Yeah, you can definitely. Yeah, there are windows that most people don't know. If you're newer to the boss fight, there are definitely windows, to your point.
Yeah.
Where you can, like, for me, it gets to a point where I'm just constantly attacking them, and I kill them pretty fast now.
Oh.
Plus, if you're using spells too, if you're using like Desolate Dive on them, it becomes like a really fast fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's another conversation, because I think I didn't used to use Desolate Dive as much, and I feel like as soon as I began to do that, it's kind of like taking a sedative. It feels like a lot of, maybe this isn't the problem here, that the bosses aren't fairly designed, but I feel like a lot of bosses, like for example Watcher Knights, they get a lot more tolerable when you can just, I'm gonna get those sweet invincibility frames while also dealing with the boss.
Yeah.
Here it's more like, if you're just, you can get a bunch of soul and then just down spell them, that's just not very interactive. I think that's the point you're making. But just in general, I feel like that Desolate Dive, it can really change a fight if you don't allow yourself to use it. I feel like you get a whole different experience.
Definitely. I was always the type of player, like, you know, going through my Hollow Knight journey, and, you know, learning the game and trying to get good at it. I was the player that preferred to rely on the nail and not so much on spells.
Same.
So I was the type of player to get, you know, Mark of Pride, Long Nail, what is the Quick Slash? Yeah, I think is the other term. Yeah. I don't use Mark of Pride anymore, but yeah, I was really big into. I was always and still am really big into using the nail rather than spells. Obviously, for the more difficult bosses, you kind of have to rely. I mean, no, you don't have to, but it's just a lot easier to rely on spells. But yeah,
I agree. I think the reason I didn't use spells that much, I think, was just because I felt overwhelmed. But I also do think the nail is really cool in some sense, and at some level of analysis, that feels like the main gameplay to me. But I will say, to give spells credit, when they're used right, when they're not abused, which I think the game should make sure you can't. And what is abusing a spell? That's an open question. But just casting a vengeful spirit from afar while the boss moves away from you, for example, I think that's just weaving into the gameplay perfectly, into the dance. You can't hit the boss with your nail. You collected some soul. Now the boss has to do his thing, whatever it is. Balloon Face from Nightmare King Grim. You fire a fireball, and then you get some more action. You keep the fight engaging at all stages. That feels like good spell usage to me.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to agree. All right, so my number 3 is Pure Vessel. Pure Vessel. Yeah, Pure Vessel is actually one that kind of doesn't follow the criteria I mentioned before, in the sense that, you know, the boss anticipation and setup, it is there to an extent, but it's not to the same extent, at least in my opinion, that you know, Sisters of Battle and NKG are.
Sure. I agree.
I think it's a little bit weaker in this sense, which is probably why I think if it did follow this, I think it would be ranked higher in my list.
Yeah.
But a big part of why I love this fight so much is just because, you know, mechanically it just feels so good.
Yeah.
The fight again, it feels kind of like a dance, kind of similarly to Sisters of Battle. The knight is Pure Vessel is fast enough that, you know, I feel like I have to be constantly moving and kind of like dodging, and I think there are really no erratic outcomes besides I know you might not like this, but Pure Vessel does jump sometimes, kind of like randomly, and he doesn't really have a towel for that.
No.
Yeah, I know that's yeah, I know that's a pain point for you.
It is.
But beyond that, I think I think everything else feels pretty good. Everything is telegraphed really well. I don't feel like there's a lot of downtime. I feel like we're always kind of there's always an opportunity to attack the knight in some way.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he's just a solid boss fight.
And you don't find him too easy?
No, I don't think he's very easy. No.
Okay, I'm glad you say that.
Now,
Okay.
yeah, obviously now, easy becomes like a subjective term at this point, because, like, I can beat Pure Vessel very consistently in any difficulty. From the vanilla game. I'm actually playing a mod right now called, with the Pale Knight instead of Pure Vessel, and Pale Knight is just a harder version of Pure Vessel. I've defeated him in the Ascended difficulty, and I'm trying to beat him in I think it's the Augmented is what it's called.
Augmented
difficulty. The second difficulty. So there's the there's the base difficulty of the boss. There's the second, and then there's Radiant.
I think it's
I always forget what the name.
Attune Ascended.
Attuned. You might be right.
Yes, maybe.
All right. Wait. So then the first one is Attuned.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what it is.
I think so.
I've beaten him in Attuned.
Okay.
I've yet to beat him in Ascended. Because it's a hard fight. Like, it's really hard, I will say.
Interesting. I'll have to look that up.
I don't even know if I'm ever gonna try the Radiance, to be honest.
Well, I'll have to see. I mean, I think the base fight is pretty tough by itself, so it has to be pretty.
It is tough for sure, and I still enjoy the base fight, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I think Pure Vessel is a great fight as well. So everything you said resonated with me. I don't think there's a lot of downtime, and well, there is one. I'm not at the level where I've found all the. I should say this. I'm not at the level where I've found all the exploits to each boss. So sometimes I might not fully grasp how you're supposed to tackle a boss. I still think if you're at my level and you have an issue and it's reasonably founded, there's still some argument to be made that it's a reasonable. If you can't beat a boss, even though you might not be getting what you're supposed to do, maybe there's something to that. Maybe the boss isn't intuitively allowing you to figure out what to do. Maybe there's some other issue. But for me, he does some attack. He does one attack, Pure Vessel, where he summons spikes, pale blades that go upward. He strikes down into the ground. And then what I saw someone do, which I love, is you can jump up and start pogoing him while that attack is occurring. And it's really fun because it's a very delicate dance. But I don't know, I don't think I know how to avoid then getting hit by his jump if he decides to jump afterwards. And maybe I'm greeting it, maybe that's the problem, but there's some randomness there which I don't like with the jump. I will say that's probably the only time where it annoys me. So I'm gonna say that usually his jump isn't the problem, because he's most of the time he's stuck in some attack animation and I know he's not gonna jump.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think so I learned this. I actually learned. It's funny. I actually learned some things about fighting Pure Vessel by having to fight the modded version of Pure Vessel, which is Pale Vessel or whatever.
Yeah.
Or Pale Knight, I think it's called. And I learned some things about him, which is really interesting. It made me better at fighting the boss. But because I know that the boss can, so the Pure Vessel can jump in those situations. I actually don't do that, by the way. When he does when he summons the blades up, I don't jump and pogo off of him.
Man, it's so fun.
I know you can pogo. Yeah, I know you can pogo the. Actually, I don't remember now. Can you pogo the knives, the spikes?
They're very tall.
I don't remember.
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe the sides of them.
Yeah, I don't remember. But yeah, I actually don't do that. I usually just dodge the spikes and then attack them after they leave.
Okay.
But yeah, if I were to do what you're just saying though,
yeah, usually
what I would do is I would just dash. So I would be very quick about it. When you pogo, I would dash away almost immediately, assuming that the blades aren't still there. If they are still there, then I would have to wait until.
Yeah, that's what I can't remember. How quickly they disappear.
So I haven't done it myself, so I would need to try it. But it'd be either that or I would Desolate Dive to get the iframes.
There it is, the Desolate Dive. It does get you out of some situations, which is probably fair, but sometimes it feels like it's a design tool that makes you not see all the small issues, which I love to do because I'm very nitpicky. And I wanted to say there, this is what I do. So what you're saying makes sense, and then I take I compartmentalize that little issue, because for me, I would do the same as you would, but then the question is, when he's done with that attack, could I get an extra 1 or 2 attacks in if he were not to jump? And if the answer is yes, I could get more attacks in, but I have to take the risk and then risk getting hit automatically. So I shouldn't take that risk, probably. then I'm frustrated because that's just a little bit of RNG that screws up a really cool attack. And maybe it's just one more strike I could get in, but over time, that just feels frustrating to me. And it's definitely because when I lose a fight, I try as hard as I can to blame myself, but I usually can't. I try to think, I accidentally think this is an issue. You should make the fight better. And that's not helpful in a lot of cases. And yet,
right.
If you're really trying to understand the boss, maybe it is.
Yeah. I really don't know. I feel like beyond that weird jump that he does where it's like that part isn't really telegraphed at all. To me, Pure Vessel feels very fair.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
You know what? I love when people bring up Pure Vessel in response to there are a lot of people who have criticized my viewpoint, saying if the boss can't randomly hit you, with half of their attacks, it's not going to be fun because it's too predictable. And there's an argument to be made at some point, I think, that you can make a boss that's too predictable. But people usually bring up Pure Vessel. They say, the argument is, if a boss like Lostkin can't hit you with his random attack, he's going to get too easy. And then people say, well, fair enough. But what about Pure Vessel? Most people don't think Pure Vessel is too easy. And to me, I would say generally, he's really fair. Almost all of his attacks. It's that one edge case, basically just that one. Maybe there are a few others, but it's it's a slim edge case where he's actually unfair. Mm-hmm. And then usually he's hard, but he's fair. And I love that. I love that about Pure Vessel.
Yeah. And that's really the big, it's really the reason why he's in this list is just that the fight itself is such a solid fight.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a good all-rounder. It does everything well. Maybe it doesn't do everything perfectly, but it does everything really well. And the big thing for me is that, I like being fast. I like having to move around a lot in a fight. And Pure Vessel fits that for me.
I agree. Totally agree. Well, so funnily enough, actually, this is kind of fascinating. We got the same number 3. So my Pure Vessel is in this spot as well for me. It's fun that we got the same boss in the same spot with a game with so many bosses. What are the chances, really? But I think he's so fun, and I actually thought he was my favorite boss for a long time. There are those little quirks. Mm-hmm. There's a tiny other one where he can throw his knives, his soul daggers, where you're not looking at him, and if you don't have sound on, it can be a little bit tough to dodge that attack. But man, it's small things like that where generally it's so thrilling to fight against him. I love pogoing him when he's doing that strike. I don't know. He has a few attacks where he swings his nail. You can parry really easily on that attack, and it's so thrilling.
Oh yeah, I love that is so satisfying. I love doing
it. It really is. Yeah.
I actually want to mention something. The daggers that he throws at you.
Yeah.
You can. So I know what you're talking about because for the longest time, my only solution to dodge that attack was just to dash into it, basically with my shade cloak. But I learned, and this I ended up having to learn fighting the modded version of this boss. Yeah. It's so interesting. You fight a more difficult version of the boss, and you learn something about the base boss that you're like, like you develop a skill that is necessary to fight this boss because there's no other way. That it forces you to learn a better way to fight the regular boss.
That's quite interesting.
I thought it was fascinating. Yeah. But you can actually tell those daggers are actually telegraphed quite in advance. Because of there's like these light rays that shoot out before the daggers get shot each, and you know that you won't get hit as long as you're kind of like not in you're not hit by the light rays. This works especially if you're kind of like far away. If the Pure Vessel is really really close to you, it's kind of hard to dodge. But I think it's still possible because I've done it before. And I'm not sure if it's because I'm getting lucky or I'm actually dodging it, because it feels like I'm actually dodging it because I see it just before I get hit and I'm jumping. But that one's kind of hard. I'm not 100% sure, but for most of the cases, like 99%, especially for the regular version of the boss, this works pretty much 100% of the time. If you look at the rays, you'll know where the sword's gonna, or the daggers are gonna come from, so you can dodge it. I won't say easily, but it is doable.
Well, that's certainly interesting. If it's doable to just use the light rays to dodge the attack, then my opinion might really change on this boss. It's a small issue for me to some extent, but that would be a really wonderful fix. And if you're too close to the boss, as you state, maybe you can still use the rays, but at least in the original fight, you could just... at that point, I don't have an issue because you can see the boss. So my issue is only when you can't. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I learned it fighting the modded version too. So it's like,
that's really fun.
you now when I fight the regular version, it's like, oh, I never have to dash anymore. I know how to dodge it the regular way. It's really cool. Okay. It's so interesting because you just learn a more effective way to take on the boss when you're forced to do it.
Yeah,
it just goes to show that difficulty makes you a better player.
That's what I was inferring as well. It feels so human that you'll do the same stupid, idiosyncratic thing 10 times a day, for 100 days of your life, and then someone forces you to, I don't know, do your routine in another way, and then you learn that it's a much more effective way to do it, but only because you were forced. You would never have experimented, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
well,
solid boss.
We agree there. So let me hear your number 2.
Okay, my number 2. This might be a hot take, actually. I'm not sure.
I love it.
I really don't know other people's opinions about this one. But my number 2 is Absolute Radiance.
Okay.
So Absolute Radiance is sort of it's kind of interesting because most people's, at least from what I've seen, most people's experience is that they fight the Radiance first and then Absolute Radiance later.
Yes.
I never fought the Radiance until way later. I fought Absolute Radiance first. I never even knew Radiance was a thing.
What?
Which is hilarious, right?
That's insane.
It's crazy. Yeah, I fought Absolute Radiance first. I've never fought Radiance, and I never knew Radiance existed. I never knew how to get to Radiance.
Wow.
And until I basically spoiled myself, because by that point, by the time I beat Absolute Radiance, I thought, okay, I've done everything I could do in the game.
That's insane.
I've beaten the game. And then I realized, no, you can fight the regular version of the quote-unquote regular version of Absolute Radiance. Fighting Radiance. And I was like, oh shoot, I didn't know this. So I obviously did it, and fighting Radiance was significantly easier than Absolute Radiance, which was hilarious. Because so many people had this experience with Radiance that it was such a hard boss, but for me it was super easy because I was so used to Absolute Radiance. It was kind of funny.
It's too easy.
Yeah. But what I love about both of these bosses, regardless, is that they pretty much have similar introductions, anticipation, and setup. In that I actually think, well, no, I don't want to say that Radiance is better in this. I think they're both just so good. But Radiance is interesting because you have to climb the set of platforms, and then you interact with the challenge key, and then everyone's experience. It's so hilarious. It's everyone is the same way. They see it and they make this comment like, what am I gonna fight, the sun or something like that? It's become it's a joke now in the community. It's always the same too. It's just so good.
It's so good. So surprising.
And and then the wings come up and they their jaws drop and their eyes are widened. It's it's just so good. Just such a great introduction to a boss. And my experience with Absolute Radiance is very similar in that you fight Absolute Radiance right after fighting Pure Vessel. And the cool thing about Absolute Radiance is that you fight pure wrestle, you defeat him,
Ah.
and
Oh
then
yeah.
the light shines, and he's looking, the pure vessel's looking up, and everything's shaking. It's kind of like scary, and and remember, in my experience, I didn't even fight the radiance by this
right.
point. I had no idea, like nothing at
Wow.
all. I hadn't spoiled myself or anything. So for me, this was my very first experience with the radiance at all. So
Crazy.
it was really scary. Like there was just sort of this whole anticipation, this whole theatrics to it. And then you get to the stage, you're looking around, you see nothing, you see the sun, and then you see it grow wings, and you're just like, oh my gosh, what's happening?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Wow.
so good. Like that whole sequence was just so good. Um, and I tried to imagine what it's like for someone who did start with, fighting the Radiance and then is now with the Absolute Radiance. I imagine obviously they know that they're about to fight, Radiance.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like almost like a PTSD kind of thing, because you see the Absolute Radiance, you see the sun, and it grow wings. It's like, oh no, we're here we go again.
Yeah.
Like I imagine what that kind of experience would have been like. I wouldn't say I regret my experience with Absolute Radiance, but I think both experiences, the fact that you can encounter Absolute Radiance before Radiance, I think is a great thing, because I think both experiences are very they're just really fun.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But yeah, and I only really gotten so far to the anticipation part, and not to the rest of it. But yeah, that whole thing I think was just so well done. It was just so fun for me. And then of course, getting into the boss fight. This one probably breaks some of the rules that you would have, and I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something about it
Yeah.
that is just really fun, and I think it's because of this this sort of. So we talk about no downtime, and usually when we refer to no downtime, we are talking about, we generally talk about our ability to constantly attack the boss and to like take an action towards defeating the boss.
Yes.
But there is something about Absolute Radiance that feels like it breaks the rules in a good way, because what you're fighting essentially is a god. That can, like, when we think about deities, we tend to think of beings that kind of transcend the laws of nature, right?
Yes.
And this kind of goes to what I was talking about with thematics, that sometimes breaking the rules for the sake of thematics might be okay. And I say this very loosely, because I don't know that I can really make that as I can't take that argument 100% seriously, but it feels right to me when I experience it myself playing the game, or not just Holland but any game, where there are these certain rules that you can break if it's for the sake of thematics, and Absolute Radiance feels like that, because you fight Absolute Radiance. Absolute Radiance is probably the most unfair feeling fair boss that I have ever taken on in a video game. If not one of the most, definitely the most unfair feeling fair boss in Hollow Knight, because you have the attacks that kind of overlap. It's always two attacks that kind of overlap each other, and you're having to dodge and all this stuff. And then you get to that phase where you're on platforms, and you can't. There's no floor that you can kind of fall back on. You have to be constantly on these platforms. It's just such a difficult boss. I love how it really it's such a great test of skill. Yeah, I just think it's just such a good boss fight. I don't know. I feel like it might fail somewhat in your erratic outcomes and vague mechanics criterion.
Maybe.
But I don't know. I feel like thematically it works because of what it is.
So sorry, I have to ask. Why do you think it fails in terms of the? So sorry. Why do you think it fails mostly? Because it feels like you actually think it might fail more than I do.
Really, that's interesting because
Maybe.
I just feel like this is just sort of my intuition based on my thoughts on what you think about boss fights. But
Yeah.
I feel like the two attacks overlapping can feel erratic, mainly because the two attacks that overlap are random technically because the attacks are chosen randomly, and if they are done in a certain sequence, it really puts you at a disadvantage unless you know about certain mechanics that you can kind of exploit.
Yeah.
Which goes to the second point is vague mechanics. The one failing, in my opinion, about Absolute Radiance that I would consider vague is the fact that you can actually, I don't know if you knew this, you can desolate dive the spikes that show up.
They go away, something like that.
Yeah, they go away. Like when you're diving onto them, you don't take damage for hitting them.
I didn't know that. Actually.
And they go away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. That's useful.
Which it is useful. And the reason that works, by the way, the only reason that works is because, or actually, maybe I don't really know this for sure, but my intuition is because usually what happens when you, let's say you go off the platform in Absolute Radiance and you get into the void stuff on the ground, you quote unquote die and it respawns you on the platform, right? That doesn't happen if you get hit by the spikes, which is usually what happens when you get hit by spikes in general in the game. So those spikes, they interact differently from the player than any other spikes in the game.
That's so interesting. They're
which
like
is
an
why
attack.
you can exactly.
Right.
And to me, that never made sense to me. I feel like personally, I feel like you shouldn't be able to desolate dive them. I feel like you should just have to just like pogo them.
That's a bit
dodge
inconsistent.
anything else.
But it's kind of cool. I didn't know that. I have beaten Radiance on Radiant once, but I didn't know that even after all those hours. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know it for a long time. Even after beating Absolute Radiant on Radiant, I didn't know. And even now that I know it, I still don't actually exploit the mechanic. Mainly because I don't like it. I'm kind of I'm kind of stubborn in that sense because I just think that I think that's the one failing of the boss fight. I know
really
it definitely makes it easier for other people, and maybe a lot of people like that about it. But
yeah, I see that in principle. I kind of think that's cool because you're enabling another ability. But I get that I agree that it's unintuitive. So
yeah,
maybe if I can just in short expressions summarize what I think about the fight. The first part I'm almost completely okay with, and that's the highest praise you can get from me, because if I can't find an issue with something, I love it. And I have played against Radiant quite a few times because I was very bad at it, or at least I've struggled getting it on Radiant. But man, I think the first fight is great. The first phase, pardon me. You can always hit the boss. I think she never teleports off screen, which is all wonderful. And then you're right that the attacks overlap, but I think to a very large degree, the developers were careful to make that not feel too frustrating. So there are definitely issues.
I do tend to agree.
If you dodge an attack too late, for example, the beams, if you don't deal with them early enough, it does feel like you get screwed by RNG, but you can counteract that. It's a thing that happens with Aura and Mato as well. Aura and Mato are two different bosses, and in some sense, Radiance is two different bosses in the sense that it does two different attacks at once, but the attacks, if they're well designed enough, they feel to me like one attack. You either get the light beams and the spikes, the nails or you get the light beams
Right.
from the radiance and the light beams from the sides. It's kind of hard to describe, but you can get different combinations of attacks, and all the combinations feel roughly the same difficulty to me. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but they feel roughly the same difficulty. And sometimes I understand people can get screwed over by the attacks. At least I hear them when they say that, but I actually rarely feel that way. There are certain few things, like the light balls in the Radiant fight. I feel like they're a little inconsistent with the hitboxes I've heard and I've experienced, but especially they blend too much in the background, I feel. But it's little things like that. Otherwise, I love the first phase.
That's really cool. Because I had the same feeling. I thought we were going to get into a discussion about this because I would have disagreed. Because I thought, because again, I go back to, because my first few experiences with Absolute Radiance was that it felt really unfair, having the overlapping attacks.
Sure.
But you know, as I got into it more and more and I practiced it, I started to learn, you know, how to deal with it. And to your point, that light beam that kind of like travels across the screen, you have to deal with that. You have to get through that very early.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you're gonna get screwed. But as long as you do get past it early, then you're fine. You only have to worry about the other attack. But yeah, I agree. Oh, there was one thing that you said that I wanted to talk about. Oh, the light balls.
Yeah.
I do tend to agree, like on 2 points particularly. One is that they tend to blend with the background because of the color. That's really tough too, because I feel like every attack of the Radiance needs to be kind of like light and bright in nature, but like obviously, you know, it's hard to deal with that. The developers, I feel like, did as well. I'm sure they could have done better too, but they did a good job with what they had. But I agree that that was a tough one to figure out.
I only say that because I feel like in the original fight, it was actually pretty clear, because I think the sky is more orange, perhaps. So it's a little more contrast.
That's interesting. I'd have to... I would have to play the original fight again, because I always thought they were the same. But you could be right there. I'm not sure.
I think so. I think that's the difference. Maybe not.
But the light balls are a lot slower in Radiant, or in, you know, the original boss fight, not Absolute Radiance. That I will say about it. And then to your other point about the hitbox being weird, it is true. There is a weird thing about them in that their hitbox. So if they land on a platform, they'll kind of like blow up and like nothing will happen, and their hitbox goes away immediately. That's the normal thing. But if it doesn't hit anything and it starts to kind of like dissipate, that hitbox will live like half a second or something longer after it disappears. And that's the weird thing. That was like an annoying thing for me when I was first doing it. When I realized what was happening, like I learned, okay, now I know how to deal with it. But it's like, that's one of those things. I would probably consider that a failing, because it's not intuitive.
Yes.
I think if the hitbox is going to last that long, there should be like at least like, I don't know, flashes or something that indicates that it's still there. But yeah,
I agree. I mean, to me that feels just like a simple thing you could fix. I don't know how simple it is, but if you wanted the thing to last longer, you could give the ball a longer duration. I feel like there's just something intuitive about the ball is dissipating, disintegrating. Now it's out of my peripheral view, out of my, out of mind, out of sight. So I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
And it's a little things like that that can annoy me. But I'd say overall, the first phase is really well crafted.
Yeah, I agree. Second phase is... What do you think of the second phase?
Yeah, I hate the second phase. I absolutely hate it. only because I'm at the point where if I have to venture out past the middle platform, and this is what ruins the fight for me, I die usually. So I stay in the middle and I wait for the boss to come to me. And you could argue that that's not what you're supposed to do. If you want to really control the fight, you should go out and do that. But for me, it's just the discrepancy between difficulty between getting a good RNG, getting the boss in the middle a few times, which I think I beat it when the boss teleported pretty close to the middle, and then I could get a few hits in and Desolate Dive and whatever upspell. Or you never get that happening, and it seems completely random. That part there's so huge difference in difficulty from where the boss teleports to. So I don't understand that.
Yeah, I actually agree there. I think the discrepancy in difficulty is pretty large. If Absolute Radiance spawns relatively near the center, it is a much easier boss fight than when she's spawning, especially when she's constantly spawning on either side of the stage. I think it is exactly. It is a huge difficulty difference.
Right.
I do think it is doable and quote unquote fair, but that discrepancy might be a problem, I think, because if you have a player who beats the boss because she is just staying in sort of the center, then what you have is a player who has reached a skill level sufficient enough to beat the boss when she's doing that, but not necessarily sufficient enough to beat her when in any situation, basically that is possible within the realm of the boss fight.
So to me, that's a pretty strong counter argument. That's like, I'm thinking, okay, fair enough. Maybe a good player should be allowed to venture out, defeat the boss, outside the middle, and get rewarded for that. But then, could you make it maybe consistent to some degree? Maybe the boss always returns to the middle after 5 teleports or something like that. It's just anything to not make it completely random. So you still had that element, but you didn't need to engage with it, or maybe it always teleported outside the arena and you had to engage with it. It's just the discrepancy. So you could just, okay, I hate this phase, I'll just try until I get lucky, and then it feels like you didn't learn the fight properly. And
I just so that we're clear, my argument or my point wasn't a counterpoint to your point. It was more me agreeing. I think that discrepancy is a problem, because if a player wins the fight on let's say the easier difficulty, then they haven't necessarily gotten good enough to beat the boss in any circumstance.
Exactly.
Within the possibility space of the boss. And I think that's a problem. At least I think to an extent. Like, obviously, there's always some level of randomness, right? But if the discrepancy is so large that you can't beat the boss at the higher skill cap, then I think that's a problem.
Right. I think I probably need 20 more hours to be able to defeat the boss if she never went to the middle. And I totally agree. Maybe it's just the discrepancy. Maybe if there was just a slight high difficulty in one rotation from another, I probably wouldn't care. But great fight otherwise. And the last phase is fun because I don't know if there's RNG in where the platforms spawn, but it feels like you have so much control. It's just tough and it's really stressful, but it's fun.
Yeah, the climbing phase, that's consistent. It's the same always. Cool. Actually, I'm not sure if the beam is more consistent as you get closer to the top. I'm not sure. I'd actually have to test that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, but maybe not.
Yeah. But yeah, I actually really enjoy that climb, by the way. When you get good enough, you can actually start to instead of like jumping on each platform one at a time, what you can do is you can wall jump each platform, and now when you do that, it starts to feel like you're flying up to the top. It's really cool.
Yeah, I bet, and I love it too, even though I can't do that.
You can't always do it like all the way, especially because the light beam will often kind of interrupt your ability to do that. So you kind of have to know when to let yourself land. But yeah, it's really fun when you can do it.
I like that there's so much control in the player's hand. I usually bait out the light beam by like, I'm going to jump over here, radiance, and then I dash back to the platform, and I feel really cool. I love that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of agency in that particular part.
totally agree. And then at the last phase, there's a little bit of randomness perhaps to where the light balls spawn. I think I abuse it. There's some strategy where you poke on top of the boss and the light balls fly off the screen. But that's a pretty intense phase as well.
Yeah. That phase, so the thing about that phase, I actually really like that phase because it is actually the easiest phase of all the phases, but it is hard because by the time you get to that point, you're like so overwhelmed and you're like sweating. It's just like so nerve-wracking that you become your own worst enemy in that phase.
It's so great. I'm starting to sweat right now because I remember how I felt. It's so. Yeah, it's so rough, but it's so satisfying when you finally beat it. It's awesome. It's a good fight. I agree with you that it definitely deserves praise. Cool. Well, did you have
number
anything
2?
else? Or do you? Okay. Well, that was your number 2, wasn't it?
I'm good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. All right. My number 2 is Sisters of Battle. So we've already talked about them, but
I've talked about her. And
I love them. I should say I don't know exactly where my top 3 place. So in some reality, Pure Vessel could be at number 1 or Sisters of Battle. I don't know exactly, but I feel like they're definitely up here just because of that extreme fairness. There are so few things I don't like. It's the little bit of downtime, and then if you go too far to the edge of the arena when all 3 are there, I feel like sometimes the boss just spawns on you. I've seen people had this occur to them as well, and sometimes it happens to me. The boss can just spawn on you and kill you, which feels unintended. And then also technically, if you go too high up in the arena, the boss can spawn on you as well. But that's at the point where I won't complain about it, because why would you do that? It's a bit weird.
Yeah, why are you up there?
Yeah, don't ask.
Solid boss fight. We talked a lot about them. Sisters of Battle could have so easily reached my top 3, but my top 3 here are they're just such good boss fights that it's really
it's hard.
The top 4 were hard for me. Number 5 was easy to say because I would say the difference in sort of my love for NKG and any of the 4 is large enough that I can easily say that it's number 5 for me.
NKG and then Sisters of Battle and then Pure
Vessel.
Vessel.
And then Pure Vessel. Right. Mm-hmm. But yeah, such a solid fight.
I was just thinking, didn't I have something? I don't remember. I think we agree here. So, do you want to reveal your number 1?
Yeah, my number 1. You didn't have any more to say? I don't think there's too much to say since we've talked about them already, but...
No, I mean, sure, we could talk about them forever, but I feel like we got to the most important parts.
Cool. Okay, so then my favorite one is Sealed Vessel. Sealed Vessel.
What is that?
Okay, Sealed Vessel is the Hollow Knight. Your first encounter with the Hollow Knight. Sealed Vessels,
Cool, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
let me hear it.
It's an interesting one, maybe because it is one of the easier boss fights of the fights that I've brought up in my list.
Huh.
But Sealed Vessel it's the boss fight that made me fall in love with the game. To this day, Sealed Vessel is the best boss fight out of any boss fight I've ever played in any other video game ever. Like, hands down. Like, wow. It is the best boss fight ever. And the reasons are... There are many reasons. So, I talked about my criterion for these 5 bosses. And I kind of pointed out the first things where I was talking a lot about the boss anticipation, the trigger to starting the boss fight, everything that happens before the actual boss fight. And obviously Sealed Vessel hits the nail there. To start the boss fight, you have to break each of the chains.
Yes.
There's this sort of anticipation because you see the Hollow Knight there. He's watching you as you hit each. I don't know if you knew this. He actually turns his head as you're hitting the chains. And once you break the chains, There's this whole sort of sequence where the music gets more intense each time you break each chain, and on the final chain, it gets the most intense, and then, you know, Seal Vessel does their scream, and the fight starts, the music starts. It's just crazy, right? And then there's the actual fight. So the fight itself, I think it's perfect in terms of difficulty. It's been a while since I fought it to really criticize the gameplay aspects of it, but I think they did a really good job with making everything feel pretty clear. There's a lot of there's very good telegraphing. I don't ever feel inactive because he doesn't. You know, he does have a sort of teleportation, but he comes back immediately into the stage, so you can always be attacking him. There are no really vague mechanics. He has a weird bug, but I mean it's a bug. It's not intended, so I don't usually count that as part of like actual design.
What is that?
Yeah. So he has this weird bug where when he turns into this like blob of you know, what's it called? Infection. Disease or whatever, and he starts infection, and he starts like slamming himself. Sometimes he'll like stay on the ground and like kind of like fly towards you or something. It's a really weird bug, and it very, very rarely happens, but it's so awkward when it happens. It's like weird, but obviously that's not designed as intended, so I don't usually. It's just a bug. Okay, and then there's the big thing. So again, so we have all these criterion that I mentioned, but there's a sort of this new thing. Maybe it's not new. Maybe there are other games that do this, but if there are other games that do what Sealed Vessel does, it is so few and far between that I can't even think of a game that does this. Mm-hmm. Particularly in a final boss fight, and that's that the fight kind of tells a story. Yeah, you're fighting the Sealed Vessel. You get to sort of his second phase where he starts stabbing himself, right? But in that second phase, the music changes from a pretty intense boss, like, you know, your typical boss fight music, to something a lot more melancholy. And you're fighting the boss. Suddenly, the boss fight is easier. Hollow Knight or the Sealed Vessel is slower. His telegraphs are slower. He staggers a lot more often. So he'll start to swing his sword and then stagger. Like you didn't even hit him and he'll just stagger. Yeah. And while all this is happening, he's continuing to like stab himself and all that. And yeah, it's just the whole thing is it's telling a story. You start to see and you start kind of like putting the pieces together. Like the Holland is helping me defeat it because it wants to seal the Radiance for good. Yeah. My first time fighting this boss fight, I didn't understand what was going on. I thought it was really weird that he was doing what he was doing. And then when I finally defeated it, you know, you get to that scene where the knight gets sealed. You know, your player, the player character gets sealed and everything is closed. And I had no idea what was going on. Like I had no idea why the knight wanted to seal itself there. I didn't understand at all. So I had to play the game more. I went and explored more of the world, and you know, I learned more about the lore and all that stuff. And then on a whim, I decide, hey, you know what? I'm kind of bored. I'm gonna fight the Sealed Vessel again because you know you can refight the boss. Oh yeah. You do it again, and I fought the boss, and as I was going through it, particularly with the sort of the melancholic stage of the boss fight, it started to click, and I realized, you know, what was going on, and that realization was very pure for me, and I got emotional when I first went through it because it was just like I have never experienced a boss fight that was so narrative in nature. Yeah. Like from a gameplay perspective, it's not even that like it's not like there's dialogue or anything. All of this is being told through gameplay. and through the music, and it's just so good. It's I've never seen a boss fight do this before. Yeah, it's that alone was enough to make me fall in love with Hollow Knight. Ever since that moment, I was a huge fan. It became my favorite game of all time. That boss fight is still to this day my favorite boss fight of all time. It is just number one. I mentioned that my top 3 were hard, but number 1, Sealed Vessel, it's easy. Like there's no boss fight even close to this fight. It's just the best boss fight to me.
Damn.
So yeah, it's very, very such a good fight.
You sell that so well. It's so awesome because I just thought about it before you revealed your last pick, that the 4 bosses you chose before really were following those 3 whatever heuristics or rules of thumb that you mentioned about having a setup. And of course your favorite boss is going to be False Knight. What is it? The Hollow Knight.
Sealed Vessel,
Sealed Vessel
or Hollow Knight.
Yeah, no, Sealed Vessel makes more sense. It's less confusing at least. Because man, I totally agree. It has such a great setup, and you even said some things that I hadn't thought about. I forgot that the music changed, and it was it's so bold, as you say. It's so bold to make the last boss a cinematic experience, because you could be afraid of tuning down the difficulty near the end. It didn't feel to me like there was, it felt like it paid out. Maybe to some extent, because there is a harder boss. You do get to fight the Radiance, so there is a true final boss. But just the boss itself is quite difficult if you don't have every upgrade in the game. So
and especially if it's your first time, you haven't fought a lot of the other difficult, like the more difficult bosses.
Yes, I agree, and I think it's funny because our last 2 picks definitely say everything you need to know about where we're coming from. I think I'm curious whether it's temperament, personality, temperament, or maybe it's the experience we had, because I had a lot more things spoiled for me than you did. Some things were mistaken. I think I saw a picture of the Radiance before I fought it, because some stupid thumbnail spoiled it for me. And some parts were. I really respect that you went all the way through Godhome and you beat Pantheon 5 before you actually looked up and found out there was anything, more to do in the base game, like finding the fragments of the King Soul. That's awesome, and I can't say I have that self-restraint. I got frustrated at the game because I was looking for those fragments, and I missed something really stupid. I went all the way down to the birthplace where you have to dream nail yourself, which is such a cool moment, and then I just didn't get it. I left. I wish someone had locked me in there. Just get it yourself, because I had to look that up because I was looking all over for hours. I went all the way down there, and I thought I'd just gotten some upgrade there. But anyway, that's another point.
Yeah.
So just to say that, I think you, how do I describe it? You really give that fight every due it's worth. And I love how you sold it to me. If I weren't so focused on gameplay, I would probably be convinced to agree with you.
I appreciate that. I mean, I have so much love for this boss fight. It's as someone who really likes to study game design, and I really like to kind of like pick apart designs, and especially as someone who really loved Hollow Knight, like playing the game, and I thought it was good overall, or such a great game overall. This boss fight is just, I feel like it's just such a great culmination of the story, of just how good of a game it is, just everything. It's just
Man, I totally agree, and it's just to say I like the fight as well. It's not I put it in the same spot as Pure Vessel. I actually like Pure Vessel more, but I think it's up there as one of the best fights. But thematically, I can see it taking my number 1 spot thematically.
Yeah, I will say, as like you do get to a skill level where Sealed Vessel is not really fun from a gameplay perspective, because obviously you're good enough at the game to beat it relatively easy. Just looking at the boss, like kind of trying to see it from a first timer's perspective too, is so
Right.
good.
And that's definitely a place where I can't just say, gameplay first. Just make the boss not hit himself at the end. Like, why would you do that? That's silly. That's a bad gameplay choice. That's where I would have to stop myself and say, this is probably the best you could have done for the boss. That doesn't mean a good boss in terms of gameplay should phase out near the end. But man, if you follow those rules too rigidly, you might. That's definitely a place I'll concede where it's probably a sacrifice. Either you get a really cool thematic moment, or you get a little more spice and the fight ends at its high point, or so on. And I think they did the right choice.
Yeah, and this is why these heuristics that we kind of have, that we use sort of as criteria for like what makes a good game or a boss fight or whatever, they really ought to be seen as more like principles rather than hard, rigid rules that we have to follow as designers. Obviously, like if you're going to break these rules, you have to do it with intentionally, with intention.
Yeah.
It can't just be kind of like an accident,
I totally agree. Right. That would be my main contention, because I totally agree that these shouldn't be hard rules, but you gotta have a good reason to break them. And what is it? Sealed Vessel is a great reason.
Yeah, Sealed Vessel is an excellent reason.
Sweet.
And I will die on that hill.
I wouldn't fight you there, because I totally agree. And we're talking again with these top 5 lists are kind of separate, but maybe that's more interesting because we get more perspectives. We're not just talking about gameplay. I'm purely talking about gameplay, and it's a limiting view to some extent. Well, my last fight, I'm sure you couldn't guess this unless you've seen one of my videos. I did not expect to put this one on top, but it's a testament to my absolute ruthless adherence to gameplay that follows these rules of you're always allowed to attack the boss doesn't cheat you. I just want a fair, good, it's basically a punching bag. That's what I'm looking for. So here's my good, cleanest, goodest fight. I think Traitor Lord is the best fight in Hollow Knight.
Oh, I knew. Okay, so I thought, like from the beginning, I was starting to wonder, because is Traitor Lord your number one? Because I know you've talked about Traitor Lord a lot. I felt like Traitor Lord was one of your favorite bosses, because you've mentioned that you really liked the boss fight.
Oh, I have. Okay,
but yeah,
the best one, really. Well, that I don't know if you think that's weird, but I'll have to defend him really quickly. I just think the fight itself, it's simple, and that's where, in some sense, my intuitions do break down to some degree. But I have the most fun fighting Traitor Lord. There's no he's an easy fight, and maybe that's an issue, but I just never fight him with charms, and then he lasts a great amount of time for me. And I love each of his attacks, just smacking at him. He's fair, he's simple, he doesn't teleport away. It's just stimulus response again, and again, and I love that. That to me, that's all I need.
Yeah.
So the only problem he has is that he has a bug where he can walk into, and I think it's a bug. Otherwise, I think he's perfect.
Yeah, I think Traitor Lord is a very solid boss fight for very similar reasons that I like Lost Kin. Yeah, I think he's such a solid boss fight. To your point, there's no real downtime. You can constantly fight him. Very few flaws. He's just a good boss fight all around. My one contention with him is I wish he was a little bit faster. I think
interesting.
if he felt like, and maybe this would be a flaw thematically if it were like this, but if he felt like his sisters, then I feel like it would be better. But maybe the reason he doesn't feel like his sisters is intended because of the fact that he's taken on the infection, and it's supposed to feel
it's like sluggish,
a little bit different. Yeah, like sluggish. Like I feel like that might have been what they were going for thematically with the boss fight.
That might be. Wow, that's so interesting. Because that's such an interesting perspective. You said it before, but I'm thinking again, that does apply here. He doesn't feel that fast. I actually think sometimes he does, but not in the sense that the Sisters of Battle are the Mantis Lords. So I see your point there, and right. I guess that I just never thought about. So I don't know if I think about it, subconsciously, but it's an interesting point.
Yeah, I would say that's like that's probably my only real issue with the fight. But again, I feel like, I feel like that's sort of a bias because I tend to really like fast characters, and I like speed. I like having to feel like I need to move fast in order to win the fight. So
It's so interesting because that's how I feel when I fight the boss. I can definitely see how he's not cheating, at least not as much as Mantis Lords do with,
right.
teleporting, so it feels like he's quicker than he actually is. I feel like every time I dodge an attack, I have to get ready for the next. But maybe that's where I am skill-wise, and I'm just at the perfect spot where he's enjoyable, where you're definitely better than I am. I'm sure you have more hours as well, so it's sluggish for you.
Yeah. It could be. It could just be the skill level too. Because I do remember my first experience, or my first several experiences with Trader Lord being pretty fun. Especially when you fight the Trader Lord with cloth for the first time.
Yeah,
That whole
that's
sequence
cool.
was there was sort of like a narrative part to it, which was good. That I really enjoyed.
You snuck it in there, the thematic component, and I love it because it really shows we're looking at it from two different perspectives, but you have to look at it from your perspective as well. And I totally see how my boss is basically, I don't think people like Trader Lord very much because he's just a glorified, one of those enemies. And at some point he didn't used to have more than 2 attacks. And I don't know, I probably would have liked him as well, just having those 2 attacks. I'm so vanilla on this point. I love just having a simple boss. He could have a few more attacks, but I like him just being able to jump swipe and just swipe regularly.
Yeah.
I gotta find out why that is, but it's something like it's just fair. It's fair. I know what I'm getting, and it's still tough to some extent because he's relatively quick. But
I think
still.
that's fair. I think having because again, like I think Trader Lord is a solid boss fight. He's definitely would he be in my top 10? He probably, if he's not in my top 10, he's pretty dang close to top 10 for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, I think he's just such a solid boss fight, very fun. And yeah, I know, like, I do like to throw in the sort of the thematics and some of the other more some of the other aspects of a boss fight, but the part of the big reason why I do that is because I feel like it's still important. Like, I feel like that matters.
Totally. I totally agree.
Yeah, because yeah, it's just, it's part of the experience for the player,
Listen, I totally agree. I'm narrowing my scope intentionally because I think it's so hard to talk if you widened, you're ranking a boss maybe on a tier list. What are you talking about? The viewer has to know. But I totally agree. And I should say, the Trader Lord has an awesome backstory. I think one of the coolest plots in the game is I forgot about it just now, I don't know how, but the betrayal of, you're inferring that he sat on that 4th throne, and now he's, he took off with his tribe. I love that. It's so cool.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so, and he's that's his name. He's the Trader Lord. Like, he's a traitor. He betrayed his tribe, and it's just I just love that. And to your point, this is why I thought it was so important to kind of talk a little bit about kind of like the criterion that I had before I even mentioned my number 5, because I these are very important things to me. I omitted the sort of the other criteria that Sealed Vessel kind of follows on purpose, mainly for 2 main reasons. One, sort of because of the I guess the anticipation of like mentioning the number 1, and number 2, because as far as I know, Sealed Vessel is the only boss fight that does this as well as it does.
For sure.
So it kind of becomes its own a class of its own in that regard. But it's why I really wanted to mention those things, because to your point, like, what makes a good boss fight? Like, a lot of people have their own thoughts about what specifically they look for in a boss, and or maybe they don't. Maybe they just kind of go off intuition, like what felt fun for them, what felt good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been super enlightening for that exact reason, because it's so clear to me that you probably have to specify that condition, because if you don't, you might end up thinking you disagree with someone you don't disagree with. Because if we were talking purely aesthetics, I can't see I would ever put Trader Lord on the top, even though I like the story. You know, we don't really know Trader Lord, and he just jumps down from the ceiling. He doesn't fulfill your criteria to the greatest extent. I could easily be convinced by your position. So when people say, "Oh, I really don't like the Hollow Knight," why don't you like him? Oh, he's definitely not my top 5. But if you keep prodding, they might say, well, he's too easy, or, I don't like that he hits himself at the end. There's no fun in that, or I didn't understand the story. So you have to specify it, because you can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And in my case with Sealed Vessel, the first time I fought it, I was so confused. I didn't understand it at all. And by that point, I didn't I wouldn't say that I loved the boss fight. I didn't hate it either. I thought it was okay. Or I thought the boss fight was good. Like, the fight itself was fun. I thought it was challenging enough at the time for my skill level.
Yeah.
But I was confused. Like, when the knight, seals himself in the egg, I was just like, what is going on? Like, why is this happening?
I agree. Not the same.
Because I didn't even understand what the purpose was. But yeah, you have to. I ended up having to explore more and learn more about the lore, and then going back to it just put all the puzzle pieces together in such a good way.
Well, case in point, I mean, that's exactly what I'm thinking. You loved that fight, but you didn't start out loving it, because you had to find out.
Exactly.
Well, you had to find out what was happening, and then, then it made sense. Cool, man. I think that was really fun, and I'm so glad we got through it all.
Yeah, I'm so glad too. I did not think we were going to spend so much time on just I was worried this was going to be like a 30-minute thing and we would have to figure out something else to talk about.
3 hours later.
We actually still have, and obviously I think maybe we should save this topic for another time, but there was and I would have to go back and rewatch this.
Yes.
But there was a particular topic that I wanted to talk about right after this.
Yeah, I forgot what that
about
was.
The bosses in general. I forgot what it was, but we've spent so much time on this that it's
that might be a perfect.
Probably could save it.
Right, that might be perfect topic for a next installment.
Yeah, for sure. I think so too.
I really enjoyed this, man, and I hope people get to see this. I hope my my editing software can take this much footage, but we'll just have to see. I'm optimistic.
Yeah. But thank you so much for your time. This was fun.
Thanks for joining me again, Lentor. It's always such a pleasure, and I hope there'll be a third time.
I hope so too. Thank you so much.